So welcome back, students. Sorry for this bit of interruption. There was a bit of power failure, so accordingly we have got a three particular video now for three parts for this particular session. Nevertheless, so here, students, it was about carried on by the SSC. That is what we are talking about it. So let's look upon to this, those things which I've discussed. It is not necessary that SSC should carry out the business by himself, even if the SSC is the business is carried out through any other person, say an agent. The profit and gains arising from such business shall be chargeable in the hands of the SSC. The maxim means, you say the maxim being, the principle being, what is maxim means? Principle. This is a Latin principle. Q facet per alium, facet per se. How you are going to spell out? Speak out with me. What is that you are going to say? Shout it loudly in the class. The person sitting and the coordinator in your center, he should come inside and see what has happened. Q facet per alium, facet per se means one who does it through his agent does it by himself. One who does it through his agent does it by himself. Okay, so the maxim being Q facet per alium, facet per se, that is one who does through his agent does it by himself. That exactly about the principal and agent. The concept of ownership, students, I've already have explained that, so that I've already have put forth in the note. The next particular part, this is what I was talking about it. Very important part, so just can mark an important one for this particular para. The company becomes a legal entity in the eye of law only when it is incorporated. So only when it is incorporated that it becomes legal entity. Prior to its incorporation, it simply does not exist. A company can enter into an agreement only after its incorporation. It is only after the incorporation that a company may decide to accept that its promoters have carried on business on its behalf and appropriate the income thereof to itself. So only after the incorporation, if the company would have given the authority to any person, maybe the promoter also, then only we could have said that the promoters or any other person are doing those business activities on behalf of the company. The question as to who is liable to pay tax on such income cannot depend upon whether or not the company after its incorporation so decides. So question as to who is liable to pay tax on such income cannot depend upon whether or not the company after incorporation so decides. So after the incorporation, what the company decides will be irrelevant to whatever has happened before its incorporation. So whatever the company decides after its incorporation is irrelevant to whatever happens before its incorporation. It is he who carried on the business and received the income when it accrued who is liable to bear the burden of tax thereon. So accordingly, you can just write accordingly, business activities carried on by the promoters business activities carried on by the promoters before the incorporation of the company, shall be taxed in the hands of the promoters. Okay, So I'm reading it out. Accordingly, business activities carried on by the promoters before the incorporation of the company shall be taxed in the hands of the promoters. Fine, students. So this is the aspect of this part of your charging section, general charge carried on by the SSC. With that now, students, the next part is a simpler one. We will read it out. The content is already given. At any time. So what they have said, profit and gains of business and profession carried on by the SSC at any time during the previous year. So the next point is about is at any time. So students, in this case, is it necessary that the business should be carried out throughout the previous year? Is that a necessity? Is it necessary that the business should be carried out throughout the previous year? Is it necessary? And the answer to that is no. Even though if the business is carried out for some time during the previous year, even then the income arising from such limited activities will be also be chargeable under the PGBP. I'll give you a simple example. Now supposing students, if I tomorrow decide to take only like a crash course in the entire year for 10 days. So I am taking up the crash course only for 10 days. So in such case, whether because I am doing my work only for 10 days in the entire previous year, rest of the time I am in the vacation mode. So will it be the case where the income which I have earned in those 10 days will fall under the head IFOS? Will it fall under the head IFOS? And the answer is no. Why is it so? Because what is necessary is that the business should be carried out. Even whether it is carried out throughout the previous year or for some point of time during the previous year has got no relevance. And therefore, students, we say that in this case the income will be charged in the hands of the company. In the hands of the SSC in the previous year in which the business is carried out under which head? PGBP. So here, if the business was carried on during some part of the accounting year but not throughout the year, the source of the income would be in existence in the year and the profit would be taxable though collected after the closure of the business. So this is another example. In the previous year the business was in existence. In assessment year before the return of income is filed, the business is closed. So because the business is closed, will I say that the profit would be charged under the head IFOS now? Because the business is closed, will I say that the profit will it be charged under the head IFOS? And the answer is no. It will still be charged under the head. Which head? Under the head PGBP. Okay. Now, there is one special point, students, which we will discuss it towards the end of the lecture. This part. A special part 176.3 and 176.4. This we will do it a bit later. It's a very unique point on a cash transaction. But before that, we will look into this very important concept, which is the last two words of this particular charging section. What is that? Previous year. So the profit and gains of business and profession carried on by the SSC at any time during the previous year. Now the concept is therefore of the previous year. Students, what is that? Ultimate. Now this primary students, you have to be careful. The concept of previous year, what exactly it implies? Just think like this. The charge is on profit and gains of the previous year. If I just connect the first two words and the last two words, profit and gains of the previous year. This is what the charge is, profit and gains of the previous year. So if the chargeability is on profit and gains of the previous year, what it implies? Think logically. I need to calculate the profit and gains of the previous year. Previous year means financial year. And therefore, as per the general principle of section 28.1, I would be required to recognize only the sales or the receipt of the current previous year, and that will be made available for deduction of the expenditure or losses of the current previous year. So only the sales of the current year will be offered for adjustment of the expenditure or the losses also of the current year. So it has to be only the current year revenue that should be matched with the current year item of expenditure or losses, because this is what the general principle say. So it is the previous year profit and gains, meaning current financial year profit and gains, and hence it has to be current year sales, which should be matched with what? Matched with the current year expenditure or losses. If this is what is a correlation, then in that case, prior period item, meaning the item of expenditure or losses which pertains to the earlier year, can that be adjusted against the current year item? And the answer is no. That cannot be adjusted against the current year item as per the general principle that we are discussing right now. So it cannot be adjusted, isn't it? General principle, it's a strict no. Again, those who have done some tax audit work, they would know that in the tax audit report, we are supposed to make a mention of prior period items, isn't it? Why the prior period item mentioning becomes necessary just for this purpose? Why? Because as per the general principle, you are not allowed to deduct the prior period item of the expenditure losses with the current year profits and gains. That is not allowed. But students, you are aware that there are certain specific provision under the head PGBP where the expenditure of some earlier year is allowed as deduction from the current year profit. Earlier year expenditure allowed as deduction from the current year profit. Can anyone give me the example of it? Any example that you can recall based on your IPCC funda? Any example? See, some students have started saying the answer. Gurgaon has started. I can sense from the students. Hyderabad also is very active on this. Bangalore, Chennai, Visakhapatnam, Rajahmundry, Mumbai. You are also not that far. Kolkata also is picking up. Students may be wondering, sir, can you see us? Yes, I can see through the eyes which is in front of me. I can penetrate to this particular system and see what's going on around the centers. So that's a technology primarily which we do have. We'll discuss on this later, but tell me right now, what is the answer of the same? What is the section? Any idea which section? Somebody has said it right, and that is section 43B. 43B, that is capital B. What is this 43B? Somebody said that even in 43B, the taxes, just now we were discussing that example, isn't it? The sales tax, GST of say 2017-2018, I have not paid. So I will not be getting deduction in 17-18. But I am making the payment. When I am making the payment? In the current previous year, that is previous year 19-20. Then what happens? Then that particular expenditure will be allowed to you as deduction in the current year. So what is this 43B says? We write it very incorrectly in our answers. What we write is deduction allowed on payment basis. When we have to write anything about 43B, all the students, even in final CA, if you ask them what is 43B, they will all say it is a deduction which is allowed on payment basis. This is what every students are going to speak about it. But it's not about the deduction which is allowed on payment basis. This is all about what? It is about defining the previous year in which some specified items which are covered in this section 43B will be allowed as deduction. So what is 43B? Defining the previous year where some specified item listed in 43B will be allowed as deduction, defining the previous year. So you will say that as per section 43B, the said expenditure is allowed in the previous year, underline the previous year word, allowed in the previous year in which the deduction is, allowed in the previous year in which the payment is made. By doing so, as I told you students, you are highlighting why this section was necessary. Without this section, you tell me students, without this section, can you get the deduction? Can you get the deduction? And the answer is no. Why you cannot get deduction? Because as per the general principle of 28.1, it says that the chargeability is only in respect of profit and gains of the previous year. And therefore, to break this general principle, we require a specific provision which can become an exception. We require a specific provision which can become an exception to this general principle. And that is the role of these particular statutory provisions of 43B. I'll give you one more example. Anyone having any idea in IPCC intermediate, you would have done this section 35D. Preliminary expenditure. Aware of that? Preliminary expenditure. Some preliminary expenditure. There is a list of section in 35D. As per that, the deductions are being allowed again in the previous year. Current year. Although there is some limitations. There is a maximum limit up to which the deduction can be allowed. But these expenditure relates to those years when the company has not yet commenced the business. So when the assessee has not commenced the business, those expenditure which are incurred, you are allowed the deduction in the current year. How that has happened? Tell me that, students. Can it happen under 28.1 as per the general principle of 28.1? Can it happen? And the answer is no. As per the general principle of 28.1, it cannot happen. So if the government intends to give the deduction, then it has to create a specific provision, and that specific provision is going to carve out that deduction of preliminary expenditures. So therefore, only through a specific provision that the general principle of 28.1 can be overridden. So therefore, these sections are exceptions. These sections are nothing but what? An exception to the general principle. I keep on giving you the list. 40AI. Are you aware of that? The most popular section. Only few sections we have done in IPCC. And thank you that you are referring only to those sections that we have done. I already do know what you have done and what you haven't. So there is one more section, TDS default. Remember that section? So what happens? In respect of the expenditure which relates to the current year, if there is a TDS default, then there is a disallowances that happens, isn't it? When the payee means the recipient. When the recipient is a non-resident, then the disallowance is 100%. When the recipient is a resident, then the disallowance is 30%. That is what the provision says. There is one amendment, students, that we will do, Finance Act 2019, in that 40AI, which is covered in this particular booklet. So before that, students, one important thing. See, students, here in the initial sessions, because as I have been told that centers would be getting the books primarily. Now the dispatches will begin. So initial next 4 or 5 lectures, I have requested the centers also to go slow in their lectures. So you may have at least, like in the centers who are watching, so at least around 4 lectures, 5 lectures in next week. So that by the time it is 8-9 lectures and the books are there, the lectures will get streamlined. So just bear for particular 4 or 5 sessions more primarily, so that only for that 4 or 5 sessions they will go a bit slow in this regard, so that books is important, and once the books are being reached, then thereafter the lectures will get streamlined primarily the way it was being communicated. So just bear with it. I just don't want to compromise on any of the aspect of your learning. Since now you are primarily with us, it's also my responsibility to not only take you through to the nuances of the subject, but also prepare you for your career in this fantastic area of direct tax and international taxation. So students, coming back to this particular 40AI or 40AIA, when you do a TDS default, when you are doing a TDS default in respect of the current year item of the expenditure, then that section says the expenditure is disallowed. You also know that there is also the provision in those sections which says that subsequently when the TDS default has been made good, subsequently when the TDS default has been made good, at that particular point of time that the deduction of the expenditure will be allowed. At that particular point of time that the deduction of the expenditure will be allowed. So in this case, again, they have to write that. It cannot be assumed. It cannot happen that without writing the provision that if the SSC comply with the TDS provision in the subsequent period, that he will get the deduction. Deduction will never be automatic. Why? Because the general principle of 28(1) will also apply in the subsequent year also, and in the subsequent year that expenditure will become a prior period item. That expenditure will become a prior period item. So to get the deduction of that expenditure which in that year is a prior period item, you will require a specific provision, and hence that particular provision of 40AI and 40AIA, 40AI and 40AIA are talking about what? Talking about the previous year in which the deduction of these expenditures will be allowed. It is talking about the previous year in which the deduction of these expenditures will be allowed. That is what these sections are talking about it. The list, students, I'm telling you primarily one simple thing. In fact, the time that we are investing right now, I'm telling you, every students have seen the way they read it, 28(1), they hardly in fact wait for 2 minutes in 28(1), and then specific charge directly hit to the depreciation part, and that is their learning. Imagine this, that whatever comes after 28, by now you would have realized they are all nothing but some exception to a general principle. So where our effort has to be, our effort should not be in 40AI, 43B. Our effort is to first decode what should be decoded, what is the general principle, capture that first, so that when you are doing those sections, you should know that previous year has to be underlined. Previous year has to be underlined, so that when you write in your answers, you are writing what? Deduction allowed in the previous year in which the amount is paid or TDS default has been complied with. All that should be there in your answers. So all the provision that students we are going to learn, you will realize, and I am going to prove it to you, that they are nothing but an exception to some general principle. And this is where the DT becomes very tough and very difficult to score. If you can capture these basic fundamental principle, then DT becomes a very high scoring paper. This is the difference. Did you all got this one? Now students, this three examples I have already given. There are many examples. Scientific research, section 35, somebody would have known. In that section also, students, scientific research expenditure which is incurred before the commencement of business, even that expenditure is allowed. But it is allowed, why? What is the reason? Because there is a specific mention of the same in section 35. Specific mention of the same in section 35. If 35 would have been silent, do you think that they would have got the deduction? And the answer is no. Of those items which is incurred before the commencement of business, they would not have got the deduction because of this general principle. But now that we have got a specific provision in place, therefore we are getting the deduction. That is the difference. So students, this is how the things looks like in this context. So there is one general principle which is put forth. Let's read this one. The charge is on profit and gains of the previous year. Therefore, attempt should be made to avoid the belated claim of deduction of expense or loss. Unless otherwise provided in the law, unless, that's the reason why I have highlighted this. Unless otherwise provided means if there is a specific provision, then that is an exception to this general principle. So unless otherwise provided in the law, no deduction is available in respect of prior period item of expenditure. This rule means the general rule is strict. Stringent one means strict one. Okay, so you want to claim a deduction of a prior period item which is not of the current previous year, then you require a specific provision. Only then you will be allowed this particular deduction. So this is a very old case law, although not that relevant, but the principle which we have written above is coming from this case law. So it's a quite old judgment where advance money was granted to an agent to obtain or renew the license of business. It was held by the Supreme Court in the Glass Miniature Bulb Industries Limited that the year of loss is the year when there was a failure to obtain the license and not the year when the attempt to recovery the amount from the agent has failed. Meaning thereby they were trying to say what is the year of your actual loss. So here actually what happened, I'll just tell you briefly. We don't have to write it, but just because it is written over here, you should know. So students, what has happened in this case was that this was a period wherein the business, you have to get the license. Now to get the license, there was you have to take an approval from the government. Now these approvals were being taken by their authorized license people, like those who actually get the license from the government. SSC wanted to renew his license. So for renewal, he actually gave the amount to his agent. Now what happened was that suddenly through a government policy, the government has stopped doing the renewal of the licenses. So they have stopped going for a renewal of the license. Now because they have stopped giving for renewal of the license, what has happened was, in this particular case, the SSC could not got the renewal. So then thereafter, but the SSC has already paid to his agent, and therefore he was in search of his agent who actually was already running, who actually ran away by taking the money. Now SSC made lot of attempts to recover the money from the agent, but unfortunately he was not successful. Once all the attempts of recovery was lost, then the SSC claimed the deduction of the loss. After all the recovery attempts was completely exhausted and he could not recover the money, thereafter the SSC claimed the deduction of the loss. So the Supreme Court has said that, look, you are computing the profit and gains of the business and not profit and gains of the SSC. The charge is on what? The charge is on the profit and gains of the business and not the profit and gains of the SSC. And therefore we have to think from the business point of view, what is the actual loss? So the business has suffered the loss. In which year? In which year the business has suffered the loss? The year in which the government has stopped renewing the license. That is the correct year of the loss. So the year of loss is the year in which the government has stopped renewing the licenses. That is the correct year of loss, and not the year in which all the attempts of recovery of the amount from the agent has failed. That loss is the loss to the SSC because he has given the money and he could not get or recover the money back from the agent. That is nothing but the loss of the SSC. But here we are computing the profit and gains of the business. So therefore the loss of the business is in which year? The year in which the government has stopped giving the license. That is the correct year of loss. So therefore when the SSC is claiming a deduction of the loss when all the recovery attempt has failed, the Supreme Court said that in that year this loss is a belated item. It is a belated claim, and because it is a belated claim, therefore going by the general principle of 28(1), it cannot be allowed as a deduction. This is what the court has held in the landmark judgment. Now, as I told you, what is important, students, is to capture this general principle, and based on that, we now, whenever we read a specific section which allows the deduction of an item which relates to the earlier year, then we should know and appreciate that this is because this is an exception to the general principle. See the next particular point, where on account of on negotiation, the salaries and wages are increased with retrospective effect. The incremental salaries and wages of the earlier year is said to be incurred in the year in which the negotiation took place and is allowed as deduction in the said year. So what has happened? In previous year 1920, I am revising the salary of my employees with retrospective effect, that is from 1780 onwards. So the increment is retrospective. So whatever is the additional amount that I need to pay for the earlier 2 years, will that be considered as being accrued in the current year? Will it be considered as a current year item or a prior period item? So definitely this amendment to the salary or the revision of the salary has happened in the current year. So therefore that amount became due, the increment amount became due in the current year, and because it became due in the current year, this is a current year item, and hence a deduction only shall be allowed in the current year. The deduction shall only be allowed in the current year. Students, the next one is very important. Herein, bad debts deduction. I think, let me brief you some provision on bad debts. Students, you may be aware in IPCC or so, you would have learned that the deduction of bad debts is allowed only when the assessee actually write off. He does what? Write off of the debtor's account in the books. Isn't it? This is the position now. You need to write off the account of the debtors in the books, only then you will be eligible to claim the deduction. Deduction of what? Deduction of bad debts. So let me bring down this particular important point. Students, pay attention to this one. This is an important one. This, students, relates to assessment till AY 88-89. Till AY 88-89. Do you know what was the position for bad debts deduction? There was no specific provision under PGBP head for bad debts deduction. Now it is there. 2617. Now there is the specific provision. As per that specific provision, what it says, deduction of bad debts will be allowed in the previous year. In which previous year? In the previous year in which the assessee write off the debtors account as bad debts. So you write off the debtors account in your books as bad debts. That will be the year in which we are going to grant you the deduction. This is a position write-off. So what I was just trying to tell you was this. In this context, students, the year of deduction of bad debts, before 88-89, there was no provision. And because there was no provision, the bad debts deduction was based on the general principle. And what is the general principle? That the year of loss or the year of expenditure only will qualify for the deduction of that particular item. The year of loss or the year of expenditure will only qualify for deduction for that particular item. So when the assessee claimed bad debts as a deduction, the assessing officer said what? He used to disallow it. The AO used to disallow it. What the AO used to say, do you know what the AO used to say in the assessment? In the assessment, the assessing officer used to say, look, this, you think it is a bad debts, but we don't think it is a bad debts. That is AO's assessment about that debtor. AO says that we don't consider that person as a bad debt. Even somebody can say today, even Vijay Mallya, who is there, he is not a bad debts, but for somebody they will say it's a bad debts. So you can understand how subjective it has become. How can you tell with 100% surety as to when a person is a defaulter or he has become bad debts? It's very difficult. So AO used to disallow on this basis that look, we think that the person still have the credit worthiness, he will still make the payment of that particular amount. So therefore, there is no question of claiming the deduction of bad debts, is what the assessee used to, or the department used to say to disallow that claim of bad debts. The AO used to say, wait for some time more. You will find that when he actually will become bad debts, at that time you claim deduction. Even assessee used to not fight, because he knows that fine, let us wait and see when that person becomes a bad debts. So then after 2-3 years, once the assessee again comes for the purpose of bad debts deduction of the same person, at that time the AO changes his stand. What he says now, oh, you are coming right now, but we think that now it is too late, because as far as our assessment goes, what happened, what they say, that as far as our assessment goes, he has already become a bad debt in the last year. So you first took deduction 3 years back. At that time we felt that yes, he is fine. Now you are coming in this current year, but we think it is too late. Why it is too late? Because as per our assessment, he is already a bad debts in the last year. It implies that claiming a deduction of bad debts has become a joke. AO was not relenting. He was not allowing you to claim the deduction. If you come early a bit, they will say you are quite early, still wait for some more time. After waiting for some more time, thereafter when you claim again that same amount as a deduction, then he used to say a different tone, and his tone was, his tune was that look, he already has become a bad debts. So therefore it was like, it was getting very difficult to claim the deduction of bad debts in practice, and hence the government made this particular amendment in assessment year 88-89, as per which now the year of deduction of bad debts is the year, which year? In the year in which the debtors is actually written off in the books as bad debts. The debtors are actually written off in the books as bad debts. This may not be the year of loss. Chances are very high that he may not be a bad debt. But now the law says we are not now supposed to check whether that person has become a bad debt or not. Only what we will see, whether his account has been written off in the books as bad debts or not, and that only will qualify you for the deduction. So that would be the year of deduction. So the year of deduction is not the year in which the debt actually would have turned to be a bad debt, but the year of deduction would be the year in which the assessee has written off bad debts in the books of accounts. So if somebody wants to argue, he can say that, sir, what about if the person is not a bad debt at all, and I have already claimed the deduction of bad debts by writing of the bad debts in the books, but subsequently I recover the money from that person, then what happens? Then there is already a provision which all of you are aware. Which provision, students? 41(4). Since now you have recovered it of an amount which was earlier allowed to you as bad debts, so once you recover the amount, in that year of recovery, it will again be charged under 41(4), isn't it? So that is why the things happens. So again, year of bad debt, students. Before that, please do take a note over here. Therefore, as per the general principle, as per the general principle, as per the general principle, the only the current year items, current year items of expenditure current year item of expenditure Only the current year items of the expenditure and loss shall be allowed as deduction from the current year. The current year item of revenue or sales. However, there are statutory exceptions as per which the deduction of please underline the word, students. Statutory exceptions as per which the deduction of expenditure relating to earlier year is allowed. And point number B, liability of subsequent period is allowed as deduction in the current year. Liability of subsequent period is allowed as deduction in the current year. I'll talk about point number B a bit later. I'm focusing right now on point number A. Expenditure relating to the earlier year. So there are various examples, students, which we have already mentioned, like 43B, 40A, etc., where the year of deduction is different from the year when the expenditure was incurred. You have already seen that, isn't it? So this is an example. I've also given you the list of 35D, preliminary expenditure. So even that is an example. We will build up those examples whenever those sections will come. Again, will repeat this particular point at that point of time as well. But let's do about the bad debts here. For bad debts, I will say year of loss, year of deduction. So what is the year of loss and what is the year of deduction? There are two different years. The year of loss may not be the year of deduction. The year of loss may not be the year of deduction so far as bad debts is concerned. What is the year of loss? The year of loss actually is the year in which the debt has completely become bad. What is the year of deduction but now? 3617. The year in which the debt has been, the year in which the debt has been written off in the books as written off in the books as bad debts. In the bracket I am writing, this may not be the year of loss, but still it is what? It is a year of deduction. So the statutory exception, so this is, I can say, exception. In the form of 3617. The year in which the debt has been written off in the books as bad debts. This may not be the year of loss. So students, this is the point. All of you are through with this one? Now the next particular part which is there, year of deduction of loss on account of embezzlement of money. Embezzlement of money, meaning thereby like for your marketing employees or there are other particular person. So for their, like you always give them some petty cash. In such particular case, the year of loss will be what? The year of loss is the year in which the assessee had, or sorry, the employee had done the embezzlement. Somebody will ask, sir, what is this embezzlement? Embezzlement means theft. This is nothing but the theft of the money. So the year of loss is the year of theft. But when the deduction would be allowed, which year the deduction would be allowed? The year in which the deduction would be allowed would be the year in which the theft is discovered. Students, in auditing, IPCC you would have learned teaming and lading. Isn't it? That particular, although the theft has happened in one of the year, wherein the person would have taken out the money from the system, but the year of deduction would be the year in which the loss is discovered. So the loss would have happened already, but the year of deduction would be which year? The year in which the loss has been discovered, the theft has been discovered. So here you can just write in this context for this part. I am writing it over here. You can just, I am erasing it. You don't erase it. You'll say, sir, shall we write it over there? See, you just require 2-3 line space. Not much space is required. So if you can write it over here, just stick with this page itself. Otherwise, if you don't have the space, then you can give the reference of the last page specific notes. Please write for the next particular part. The year of loss is the year in which the embezzlement the year of loss is a year in which the embezzlement of money has taken place. But the year of deduction is the year in which the embezzlement is discovered. The year of loss is the year in which the embezzlement of money has taken place, but the year of deduction is the year in which the embezzlement is discovered. So this is what will be in respect of the amount which will qualify for the purpose of deduction. Okay, students. Now I told you about the second exception. This is part A, wherein what we have learned. First one was the general principle. As per the charging section 28.1, it requires the chargeability of profit and gains which is of the relevant previous year. But there are certain statutory exceptions as per which the belated items, earlier year items, is allowed to you as deduction, but that is only as per a specific provision. At the same time, students, there are cases where the liability pertains to the subsequent year. The liability pertains to the subsequent year, but the assessee is claiming deduction in the current year. Do you know why this happens? Why this happens? Liability pertains to the subsequent year, and the assessee is claiming deduction in the current year. Can you give me first any example of it? How this liability which relates in the subsequent year, but the assessee is claiming a deduction in the current year? How the assessee is claiming a deduction? In what name? In what name the assessee claims that deduction? Yes, you got it right. It is through provision. So he creates the provision of those liabilities in his books of accounts, and by virtue of which he is claiming what? He is claiming those deduction. So he is creating a provision in the books, and by virtue of which he is claiming a deduction. Now what the assessee says is that, look, we have accepted accounting conventions, practices. Those accounting conventions and practices allows us to claim deduction of the liability which relates to the subsequent period. Do you know, students, principle of prudence, principle of conservatism, isn't it? And applying those prudence and conservatism principle, you are creating the provision for the liability which may relates to the subsequent year. So the assessee says that as per the accounting principle, as per the commercial accounting principle, we are allowed every right to claim the deduction of those liabilities which will pertain to the subsequent year. That is the general principle, isn't it? General principle means that is what the commercial accounting principle says, and we are supposed to arrive at the profit and gains as per the commercial accounting principle. So I have prepared my books as per the commercial accounting principle, and because of that principle, those liability which may relates to the subsequent period will be allowed to us as a deduction in the current year. This is the argument put forth by whom? By the assessee. Now therefore the question is whether the assessee will they be allowed the deduction. On this basis, assessee says that we will require the deduction, but when the return and when the assessee files his return and thereafter the assessment take place, the assessing officer, what he does, he disallows those provision. Why he disallows this provision? Because he says that, look, you will get deduction. You are supposed to determine the profit and gains for the relevant previous year. And because you are supposed to determine the profit and gains for the relevant previous year, hence what? Only the current year item of expenditure loss or the current year liability, only that will be allowed to you as deduction, not something which will relate to the earlier year. Because AO is going with the general principle of profit and gains for the previous year. SSC says that if this is what you say, the same particular profit and gains has to be computed as per the commercial accounting principle, and going by the concept of prudence and conservatism, I am allowed the deduction of these particular provisions. This is what is the alternate argument of the SSC. And therefore, students, this was again a huge area of litigation. And how this area of litigation now has been resolved? So the area of the litigation has been resolved through what? Through the ICDS. ICDS number 10, the last ICDS, talks about the deduction for these provision or the contingent liabilities or the contingent assets, as the case may be. So they are very clear on one thing: contingent liability will never ever be allowed as deduction. But what is contingent liability? That is a question mark. So we should understand, students, what is not a contingent liability. Automatically we'll come to know what is contingent liability. So let us understand what is contingent liability. What is not a contingent liability? So ICDS 10 says this, that if the provision that you have created, is reasonably certain, provision for what? Provision for the liability. So if the provision for the liability that you have created is reasonably certain what? That this liability is going to materialize. This is the first one. The first test is to determine, is there a reasonable certainty that the liability is going to be materialized? That is the first test. And the second test is, can you estimate that liability? That is your second test. So if both the conditions are satisfied, one is a reasonable certainty and the second is quantification. Estimate means you are in a position to quantify your liability. If these two conditions are satisfied, only then ICDS 10 allows you the deduction of those particular provisions of liability. But if any one of the conditions are not satisfied, then automatically these provision will become a contingent liability, and therefore ICDS 10 says it will not be allowed as deduction. So these litigation which was persisting between the SSC, who was banking upon the commercial accounting principle for the purpose of getting the deduction of these provision for liability, versus the department who was following the concept of previous year to disallow these provision for the liability. So this is now being settled through an ICDS criteria. ICDS has given the criteria that we will allow the provision for liability only if it satisfies both the conditions, and the conditions are, number one, that the SSC in this particular case is in a position to estimate the liability, and second one, there is a reasonable certainty that the liability is going to materialize. I'll give you example, students. First, I wanted to share with you what was the background and under what circumstances ICDS 10 has to be introduced. So you now know the background and under what circumstances the ICDS 10 has to be introduced. And now I'll give you the example. Students, one thing which be very clear, ICDS has to be done when you are doing PGBP. You can check with the students and all, such a wrong way of doing the study of ICDS. They do ICDS after they have done with the heads of income, as if it's a separate topic. It's not a separate topic. It is influencing in a very big way your computation of PGBP. Now we are actually in the fourth lecture or so. In the third class itself we did ICDS 4. Now you can relate, yes, what is the need and necessity of this particular ICDS. So ICDS 4 was being captured. Right now when we are doing this particular part, still in 28.1, we are connecting with ICDS 10. ICDS, see, this is how ICDS has to be completed. We also have got the text, which I'll show it to you, but a bit later. And on that there are practical problems. But when you need to do what is the game of the direct tax law, you should be in a position to connect it. And that is how all your income computation disclosure standards needs to be dealt, so far as getting a firm grip on these particular area, which is heavily asked in the examination also. But ICI students target the ICDS in not a theoretical way. They actually will merge some adjustment of ICDS in your total income computation. And if some adjustment of ICDS is merged in your total income computation, then you should all know that these adjustments are relevant for which head? These adjustments are relevant for which head? When you do the computation under the head PGBP and IFRS. That is what you should be very clear about it. So I'll give you first one the example. Here also the example has been given to you. The first example is warranty charges. Now what is this warranty charges and all? Warranty type, I'll give an example like a motor car company, say Tata Motors. They are the manufacturers of the motor car. So Tata Motors, they are selling the car, and on the sale of car, there is a 3 years warranty is what they give to their customers. So 3 years warranty. Warranty means that for the 3 years period, the customers can get the servicing of its car done free of cost. Servicing of the car done free of cost. So when the customer will buy the car, he gets actually the service coupons. When the customer buys the car, he gets actually those service coupons. So what he does is that he goes to the authorized service station, take his car along, do the servicing and redeem one coupon, give it to him. What that authorized service station will do? The authorized service station will then try to give it to Tata Motors, those coupons, and whatever was the rate which was being decided, by Tata Motors and authorized service station, on that basis Tata Motors will start reimbursing to the authorized service station. They will start reimbursing. So the point here is that the Tata Motors who have sold the car, they are creating the provision for warranty expenditures. That is the amount that they are going to pay to whom? To the authorized service stations. For that they have already created the provisions. Fine. Say herein they have made a provision of 5 lakhs on the basis of the sale of the car that they have done in the current year. They have created the total provision of 5 lakhs. The claims would come in the subsequent year, isn't it? Because not at one point of time that the servicing would be done. The servicing would be done in intervals. So the claims will be put forth in the subsequent year. So for that he has created the provisions. 5 lakhs is the amount of provision. So question therefore is, will that be allowed to you as a deduction? Will that be allowed to Tata Motors, the deduction? And the answer is yes, the deduction would be allowed because both the two conditions of ICDS 10 is satisfied, and they are: number one, is the liability of warranty claims reasonably certain? Is the liability of warranty claims reasonably certain? And the answer is yes. And the second condition, can Tata Motors reasonably estimate the amount of the warranty claims, that 5 lakhs? Can they reasonably estimate? And the answer is again yes. Why? Because they have already entered into the contract. Rate is already fixed for each coupon. So what would be the estimated claim that can be known to Tata Motors in that year? And hence, because both the conditions are satisfied, therefore the deduction would be allowed. Both the conditions are satisfied, therefore the deduction would be allowed, isn't it? So just write in this regard, students, quickly. I'll write here warranty charges first. As per ICDS 10, as per ICDS 10. Provision I.R.O. What is that? In respect of a trading liability. Provision in respect of a trading liability is allowed as deduction if the following two conditions are satisfied. If the following two conditions are satisfied. If the following two conditions are satisfied. A trading liability is allowed as deduction if following two conditions are satisfied. The liability is reasonably certain. The liability is reasonably certain, and both the condition has to be satisfied, students. Only then you will get deduction. And it can be estimated. If both the above conditions are satisfied, both the above conditions are satisfied, comma, the provision for warranty charges shall be allowed as deduction. Shall be allowed as deduction. So if both the above conditions satisfy, the provision for warranty charges shall be allowed as deduction. Students, I'll ask you one question here and let me test your intelligence on this. The question is it possible? The question is it possible that after the warranty period is over, the actual claim of the warranty is lower than the provision which I have already made? How much provision I have already made? 5 lakhs. The actual claims which was being put forth was, say, approximately 4 lakhs. What I will do of that for rupees 1 lakh? What I will do of that rupees 1 lakh? So I have claimed the reduction of rupees 5 lakhs. However, the actual claims which was being put forth was only rupees 4 lakhs. So the question to all of you is, what I am going to do of that excess of rupees 1 lakh? Income, yes, why not? Everything is an income at the end of the day. But income under which section? Income under which section? Please come to page number 'The next topic after this, 41.1. I want all of you now, I'll put it also on the screen. Students, Please take page number 73. I've broken this provision 41.1. Read this particular provision till explanation 1. This provision, students, will do in piecemeal, means part by part. So right now I want to draw your attention on this one. All of you will read this particular provision. I'll also put it in the screen, full screen. So students, what's the take here? 41.1 condition, profit chargeable to tax, where an allowance or deduction has been made in the assessment for any year in respect of loss, expenditure or trading liability incurred by the assessee, which is the first person, plus subsequently. So what should have happened subsequently? What should have happened subsequently? Subsequently, during any previous year, first person has obtained this or this. That is, either he has obtained the amount which he has already taken deduction in the earlier years, or he would have got the benefit in the form of the liability has ceased to exist. Can you see this one? So if he has taken the deduction of a liability in the earlier year and subsequently that liability has ceased to exist, then what we are going to say? That it will be a deemed income of the assessee in the subsequent period. So this is why 41.1 has been introduced. They knew that this kind of situation will happen, and for this reasons only that 41.1 has been introduced. So students, just continue in that particular notes, in that provision for warranty in the next line. In the next line, right? Further, where the warranty provision, where the warranty provision was allowed as deduction, was allowed as deduction in the previous year, and subsequently the actual claim is less than the total provision made the provision allowed earlier then is less than the provision allowed earlier the then the excess provision shall be considered as deemed income under section 41(1). Shall be considered as deemed income under section 41(1). Fine, students. So this is how you're supposed to put forth the observation on this count. So ICDS 10 you have to write like this, the Roman 10. Be careful on that. Okay. Now let's take across the next one, disputed liability. So if you have created a provision for disputed liability, so in this case, whether you will be getting the deduction of disputed liability, and the answer is no. What is the reason for that? Because the liability is not certain. So here, students, disputed liability you can write disputed liability, since the liability is not certain, comma, the deduction in respect of such disputed liability is not available. Such disputed liability is not available. Okay. Now comes, students, after this couple of points. So in this regard, ICDS 10, students, I've already given you in this regard the simple points of ICDS 10 that you should know for the purpose of its deduction. So that above you have already taken in a note of. Now students, if you see the previous point here in this context, discount on debentures, this particular part, question is when the discount on debentures will be allowed as deduction. This is the issue under consideration. Just keep in mind a very important principle now. Students, what happens, it's like, for example, if you just take an example, and therefore we will be in a position to discuss and deliberate on this. Let's take a case where the company has issued a debenture. So a company has issued a debenture, say the issue price was at 80, but it was supposed to be redeemed at par, meaning at 100. So issue price 80, meaning at discount, and it was supposed to be redeemed at par, which is 100. So the discount amount is 20. Now the life of that debenture is 10 years. So the life of the debenture is 10 years. Therefore the question is how the deduction of this debentures would be allowed. What is the treatment of the debenture deduction? Treatment would be what? So in this context, the treatment is like this. You tell me one thing. I think all of you are aware of this part, that what we all do is that on a pro rata basis for 10 years, 20 divided by 10, every year 2 would be the amount that will be allowed as deduction. Every year 2 rupees would be the amount that would be allowed as deduction. Now, in this context, when 2 rupees is what is allowed to you as a deduction every year for 10 years, please understand one thing. In the first year when I have issued the debentures, please pay attention to this part. In the first year when I have issued the debentures, my liability is how much now? Can you tell me what was my liability? Liability was 20. The extra which I have to pay is 20. So is the liability certain? In the first year, that is the year of issue itself, is the liability certain? And the answer is yes. 20 I have to pay, that I know on the day one, on year number one. And second, can you estimate your liability? There is no question of estimation. I know my liability, which is 20. And therefore, if both the conditions are satisfied, then you should have claimed full 20 as deduction in the first year itself. If both these conditions are satisfied, then you should have claimed full 20 as deduction in the very first year itself. But are you claiming that? The answer is no. You are not claiming that as a deduction. And therefore, students, in this regard, since you are doing a pro rata, can anyone tell me the logic of why pro rata is done? Spread of 10 years, that is good. All accounting logic and all, it is good. But why we do a spread? Why not in the very first year take full 20 as your deduction? Why you are taking a spread? Why not you take full 20 as deduction in the first year? Because if you see, students, even in the second year, the same two conditions are satisfied. What are the same two conditions? The liability still exists in the second year, and what? And you can estimate that liability. In the third year also, you can have the same logic. Liability is certain, and you can also estimate the liability. Fourth year also. So this, both the condition are getting satisfied for all the 10 years till the time the debentures are redeemed. So for all the 10 years, this twin condition, the two conditions are satisfied in all the 10 years, and that is the reason why we do a pro rata basis calculation and divide the total liability amongst those 10 years on a pro rata basis. So therefore, that is the reason why we take that 2 rupees. But the pro rata, students, is a secondary concept. Primarily concept is, am I allowed the deduction of discount on debenture? And the answer is yes. Why am I allowed the deduction of discount on debenture? I am allowed because the liability is certain and it is capable of being estimated, and hence I am allowed the deduction as per ICDS 10. Now the second concept comes, that of pro rata. And why we are doing pro rata, even that logic is known to you. And therefore this deduction is allowed. So just take a note of this one also quickly. Herein, just write, students, for disputed liability. I'm just raising this part, but you all in this context. So students, just write this: discount on debentures, discount on debentures. So write down discount on debentures, discount on debentures. the liability which is represented by discount amount is both certain and fixed. Is both certain, and this is both certain and fixed, and hence qualifies for deduction. Further, since the servicing of the liability is for fixed period, in the bracket write, that is the life of debentures, life of debenture, bracket complete. Therefore, the deduction is allowed on pro rata basis. Deduction is allowed on pro rata basis. So this is how, students, it has to be considered so far as the discount and debentures are concerned. Fine. Now the last particular point, quickly, students. The last particular point. Last point. All of you are through with this writing? Advertisement expenditure. This I'll just explain to you. We all know, students, advertisement expenditure is allowed as deduction. Advertisement expenditure is allowed as deduction. All of you are aware of that. Now, so far as advertisement expenditure is concerned, students, we do the expenditure in the current year and we get that entire deduction. Liability, all the things are fixed. Amount is known to us. We get full deduction of the advertisement expenditure. But here, students, the point is like this, that if I do advertisement today, I may get the benefit in the coming year. The benefit can also be available for the subsequent year, isn't it? So is it that for advertisement expenditure I am doing a pro rata basis deduction? Is it that for the advertisement expenditure I am doing a pro rata basis deduction? Just the way I have done it for discount and debentures. Am I doing a pro rata basis deduction even for advertisement expenditure? To that the answer is no. I don't go with the pro rata basis for advertisement expenditure. And therefore, so far as the advertisement expenditures are concerned, the deduction which is allowed primarily is full deduction in the first year itself. By the way, what about the difference between discount on debenture, where I am taking pro rata basis deduction, and the advertisement expenditure, which I am taking a full deduction in the first year itself? The reason is clear, that in the case of discount on debenture, I can measure the period for which the benefit is available. I can measure the period for which the benefit is available. The liability servicing would be there. That is the life of the debenture. But can that be same? Can that same thing can be said for? Can that be the same thing which can be said for advertisement expenditure? And the answer is no. As far as the advertisement expenditure is concerned, we all know that for how many years the benefit would be allowed, we don't know. And hence we get a full deduction of the advertisement expenditure. So just write next to this one, full deduction in the year in which it is incurred. In the year in which it is incurred. Full deduction in the year in which it is incurred. So this is a difference between the two. So as such, there is no connect. The only connect is that why for discounted debentures and advertisement expenditure there is a different treatment, because the benefit in the case of discounted debentures, that life of that benefit is known, whereas for advertisement the life is not known, and hence full deduction is allowed. With this, students, we have done this massive 28.1, and I told you at the start of the class today also that we are going to unfold all your PGBP today. Now you come to know that when we will do those sections 43B, 40AI, for 35D, do you think that we require now much of time, or even bad debts? Now do you think we will require much of time? And the answer is no. We know what this section is all about, what is the condition and why the condition has been given. And other aspect is already the why of the provision is known to all of us. That is what we should focus on. In fact, the booklet, if you see towards the end, our feature of the lecture is the why of it. If you know the why, you know the how. That is the game. If you know the why, you will always know the how, and the how will become very easy and simple. And this is where your revision, students, initial class is very important. Now quickly wrapping up, students, the last thing which I told you, just all of you read this particular point once, this particular point quickly, the last point. Students, this is page number 53. This part which I told you, I will do it towards the end. So what it says that in the case, see what happens. I'll just give you a brief particular fact, and there is one question towards the end which I'll just write it over there. So students, here is your issue number 4, which I was talking about it. Now, so far as this particular point is concerned, students, exactly the situation is like this. I'll suggest to all of you, just take this as a homework. All of you, just take this particular point as a homework. Why I'm saying so? Because issue number 4 is one of the, I'll give you those entire background, foreground and all. Just take that as a homework. See students, this is only for one small categories of the SSC to whom this particular point is applicable. As per the commercial accounting principle, we all know we have got either mercantile system of accounting. On that basis we can prepare our books, or we can make also the cash system of accounting. So either you do as per the mercantile system of accounting, or you can do for the cash system of accounting. Now students, if you are doing it as per the mercantile cash system of accounting, then although you may have done sales in the current year, or you may have incurred the expenditure in the current year, but your profit and gains that you are going to determine, the profit and gains that you are going to determine would be only of those sales which you have realized in the current year. which you have realized in the current year. So the profit and gains that you are going to determine would only be limited to those amount of the sales which you have done in the, which you have realized in the current year. Same happens for the expenditure, cash, whatever the expenditure which is paid in the current year, only that will be taken into account, because that is what the cash system of accounting is. So what may happen, students, that it may so happen that in one of the year I have closed my business, and if I have closed my business, but even after closing the business, I am receiving this particular amount from my customers, or I may have to pay some amount, as the case may be. So even though I have closed my business, still I am receiving the amount. Now question therefore is whether in section 28(1), the charging section, the amount which has been received after the SSE has closed the business, whether that can be charged to tax. The answer is no. Why is it so? Because we all know the chargeability will arise in the year in which the business is carried on, and since the business is no longer in existence, therefore the chargeability will not arise. Since the business is no longer in existence, therefore the chargeability will not arise, and therefore, and that is a loss to the government now. Why it is a loss to the government? Because you were taking the cash system of accounting, on that basis you were determining your profit and gains, so you are giving only your cash profit for the purpose of chargeability. And now subsequently when you have closed your business, at that particular point of time, you are still receiving the consideration, but now we cannot tax it in 28(1) for the only reason that the SSE business is not in operation in that year, and therefore to ensure that those receipts which the SSE is receiving even after the closure of business or profession, which was not taxed earlier, will be taxed. But under which section? Can it be taxed in 28(1)? No. It will be taxed in which section? 176(3)(a) and 176(4). So it will be taxed under these sections. So accordingly, it will be taxed in the year of receipt under these two sections. So this, I am doing it only because of MCQ, which I am doing it. Apart from that, students, I have told you this issue number 4 also, which is there towards the end. You will just go through it once. So that will be the final thing as far as your charging section which is concerned. Page number is 65. So page 65, issue number 4. Students, with this one we are done with the general charge, and now the next class we will do all the specific charge of your head PGBP. All the specific charge we are going to do. Okay, so therefore that would be done in the next class. After that we will then start with the sum of the deductions. So that is what we will start with it. Your textbook flow would be there. Again I am repeating, students, because of the textbook issue, this coming week we will just ensure to have less lectures so that all the strengths gets textbook. That is the priority now, and then thereafter we'll have the full swing of all your lectures at your center. So just bear for some few more lectures, some 4-5 lectures just more, and then your lectures would be all in swing. Okay, but your job now is only one thing. I am also revising. I am doing a cumulative revision with all of you, all right from our first class, the revenue receipt plus the specified capital receipt plus the scope in section 5 and the computation in the manner in the computation classification, and then thereafter the rules of computation of every heads of income. This flow I have maintained even today. One important takeaway that I gave it to you at the start was that 3 things that you should always keep in mind. What is charged? Second, when it is to be charged, that is the recognition part, and on what amount, that is the valuation part of it. And this is what you should always ask the question as to whenever the provisions are being read, exactly what they are trying to convey, isn't it? Today also one very important point that we have realized, that the general principle of previous year for which the profit and gains is to be computed, what it implies, that is what we have learned. And we have seen that in the head PGBP, the sections which are there, major sections are only what? Exceptions. The sections which are there, they are actually only the exception to the general principles. and thereafter the examples. I have unfolded it, and this is what we have dealt in the today's class. Okay, so your comprehensively the things are done. Now next class, specific charge, students. We will start on the PGBP. In fact, one specific charge we have already done it, and that is of 28 2E. We will now follow the remaining one. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless to all of you.